Okay, you can't build a PC for $500 that equates to what the Xbox One X is. And that's very rare because normally anytime a new console comes out or something, I often go through a little thought exercise where I try to build an equivalent PC. I mean, not often, but I've done it over the years. And you pretty much always can. Mostly that I remember anyway. But with the Xbox One X, I was surprised to actually go through the thought exercise, and I couldn't. Now, I bring this up because NeoGAF made a thread about it. PC World struggles to build PC for $500 to match Xbox One X. And then he says something like, they need to ask GAF for help. No, you can't do it. GAF is full of shit. They're just trying to make Xbox look bad, of course. But yeah, this girl, I don't know who she is, that wrote the PC World article, Elena Yee. This is kind of a shitty job. Just pointing out some things. Now, when I did a similar build the other day, and I didn't bother to write it down on a notepad, it was similar to this except for one. The prices she comes up with are similar, very close to what I had. But a couple things, I actually forgot the hard drive, and I didn't realize it till just now. So I had concluded that you kind of could build an Xbox One X for around $500, but it actually came out to a little more, like $520-ish. Well, not only that, but I didn't realize at the time I had completely forgot having any kind of hard drive. So whoops, that would have added another $50, and my build would have been at least $570, and I would have, I think it came out to, if I just stretched everything, I could get everything for $517. So I said, well, that's pretty close to an Xbox One X, my Xbox One X equivalent PC build. I said, well, that's pretty close to an Xbox One X, so I'll call it and say close enough. But adding another $50 for the hard drive that I forgot, it would have been $567, and that's not close enough to just call it good. So looking at her build, it's similar to mine, but here's one thing I did that she didn't, that knocked about $50 off the price, was I went with the Athlon X4 860K 4-core. Now, someone that's not too sophisticated might just assume, well, it's got to have an 8-core, but no, it doesn't, because the X4 860K is clocked at 3.7 gigahertz, whereas the Xbox One X 8-core is clocked at 2.3 gigahertz. So right there, do the math, the 860K I used is about 50% faster. 3.7 divided by 2. It's 2.3 for the Xbox One X clock speed. 60% faster, so it's almost double. So the point is, 4 cores is right there, almost. Let's multiply that times 4 cores. So it's like equivalent to about 6.4 cores. The point is, if you can get a 4-core CPU, like, it doesn't necessarily need to have 8 cores. That's not. Let's say you have some hypothetical CPU with 8 cores at 2 gigahertz. Well, if you could have that exact same CPU with 4 cores at 4 gigahertz, half the cores double the clock speed, it's equivalent. In fact, the one with fewer cores would be faster because there's a certain amount of overhead involved in spreading out all the instructions. So, everything being equal, the more cores is always less efficient. Ideally, you would have, 1 core running at 30 gigahertz or something. That would be way more efficient. But they hit the clock speed wall some years ago, so the only way to keep increasing power was to keep adding CPU cores and try to go parallel with it, because they couldn't keep upping the clock speed anymore. The point is, if you could get 4 cores that were as powerful as the 8 cores in the Xbox One X, it would be equivalent. You don't need 8 cores. That's an arbitrary definition. And I'm assuming that the X4 860K cores would probably be roughly 4 of them would be as powerful as 8 Jaguar cores in the Xbox One X. Because for starters, as I showed you, they have a 60% higher clock speed. That's most of it right there. I mean, that makes them equivalent to about 6.5. But that assumes they're exactly as fast as the Jaguar cores. Now I'm going to assume, I know PC parts, that the X4 860X core, 860K cores, they're Kavari cores, I believe, that they're faster clock for clock than the Xbox One X Jaguar cores. So that means that it's a little bit more powerful. So that the 3.7 gigahertz Athlon X4 860K cores are, I'm sure, equivalent in power to 2.3 gigahertz Jaguar cores in the Xbox One X. So if you substitute the X4 860K, though, is cheaper. I believe it was around $45. It's very cheap. So that was the difference in my build. I substituted this for a Athlon X4 860K. If I could just open a notepad, yeah. CPU would be the Athlon X4 860K. So that was the main difference to her build, one of the main ones. And now the X4 860K is available on Newegg for about $45. So that knocks close to $50 off our price, rather than going with the FX 8300. Like, see, this is much more powerful than the CPU in the Xbox One X, to be honest. It's 8 cores at 3.3 gigahertz. So, now the motherboard, about the same price. The cheapest one I found ran about $50. It was a Micro ATX that I found. RAM, she's correct. It ran about $50. Oh, and I decided, yeah, that it was hard to figure out exactly what RAM I needed. The Xbox One X is a 12 gigabyte unified system. I figured the best equivalent would be an 8 gigabyte video card on the PC and 8 gigabytes of RAM, of system RAM. But, you know, just figure that the system RAM is slower than the GDDR and the Xbox One X, so assume you kind of need more of it. You know, it would be tough to build a PC card with 12 gigabytes of RAM. And if you build a PC with 8 gigabytes of system RAM and a 4 gigabyte video card, that's not equivalent, because the Xbox One X has that 12 gigabytes of fast RAM sitting there, so you can basically pack a lot of gigabytes onto the video card. And if you only had a 4 gigabyte video card on the PC you built, you could not, you know, I think you need 8 gigabytes at least for equivalency. Now you can say that the Xbox One X uses a lot of its RAM for operating system and stuff, but so does the PC, so that's a wash. So yeah, to me the equivalent would be 8 gigabytes of system RAM, just like this lady did, so she was smart there, and an 8 gigabyte video card minimum. You know, that's not an exact equivalency, but I think it would be as close as we're going to get, you know. They don't really make video cards above 8 gigabyte. They do, but they're super expensive, like the Titan X and the Titan XP. So we're not going to worry about that. I think 8 gigabytes of system RAM, that gives you 4 more overall gigabytes to make up for the fact that some of your RAM is slower. You know, none of this is a perfect equivalency, of course, just like the CPU isn't and nothing else is, you know. We got to do as best we can. These are basically equivalent. So she comes up to $652. Now she did a couple interesting weird things. My bill originally came up to $517, but I forgot that I did not include a hard drive. So that puts $50 on mine. My total cost was $567. Still way more than the Xbox One X. Now, interesting though, she put a Blu-ray drive on there, which I didn't, because to me, if you're building a gaming PC in 2017 in the United States, you don't need a Blu-ray. You don't need an optical drive. I included no optical drive. Now here's a caveat though: the Xbox One X has the Blu-ray drive. And to me, you don't need it for games. Let's just assume you're going to download all your games on both systems, basically. So, you know, a brand new PC that you build in 2017, you don't need an optical drive. You know, I have one and I never use it, except for maybe the very rare driver CD with a printer or something, and I don't even really use it for that. Optical drive is the same. When I started building PCs, I remember you used to put floppy drive in them, and you stopped needing those some time ago. And it's the same thing. Now, years later, it's become where you don't really need an optical drive. Now, I would throw one in a system I built probably because they're $20. Why not a DVD drive? You may need one in an odd case here and there, but if you're building a new PC in this day and age, you don't need an optical drive. Everybody downloads their games off Steam. So I didn't include any optical drive in mine. Now, if you want to say like we want to build the same thing, so they both gotta have the same thing. I don't think this is a UHD Blu-ray drive, so it can't play. Yeah, it can't play the UHD Blu-ray. I'm pretty sure. But what do you need the UHD Blu-ray for? All it would be is that you could watch some 4K movies on your Xbox One X, and that's a very niche case no matter what anybody says. Because you can stream 4K movies now. Granted, the quality is not going to be quite as high, but you can stream 4K off of Netflix. The point is, most media you're watching is going to be streamed. You don't need a 4K Blu-ray drive. What does that give you the option to do on your Xbox One X that you can't do on your PC build, or hypothetical Xbox One X equivalent PC build that doesn't have any UHD Blu-ray drive? Nothing much, really. Games you can download all from Steam on PC, and so the Xbox One X gives you the option that you can play a Blu-ray disc 4K. Let's say you want to watch a movie and you rent the thing is, that's a niche use case. Yeah, it's nice. It's better than not having it, but no, discs are going the way of the dodo. It's all streaming now. So, yeah, to me, you're not going to make a perfectly equivalent system here. So I just put no optical drive whatsoever in my build. That came out the 517, I believe, originally, but it had no hard drive, as I kept mentioning. Now, she came out pretty close to right with these other prices. I gotta commend her on some of these. I gotta think she's dumb for some of the things she did, like including the FX8300. But most of this other stuff she did correctly. Cheap. I came up with about the same price on the power supply. It was $35, I believe, for a name brand. You always want to go name brand and power supplies. It's one thing you don't want to cheap out on. So you don't want to buy a no name because you don't know what kind of quality it is. You want to buy she bought a Thermaltake. The one I picked, I don't remember, but it was maybe an Antec. You want to make sure it's a brand name just so you know that it's decent. It doesn't have to be great. And it came at $35 for her, same for me. So she did correct there. I didn't pick the exact same power supply or whatever, but mine came to $35 as well, and it was a 500 watt name brand. I know it would work for this system. Case, same difference. I just picked some kind of there you don't even need a name brand, but I don't remember if I picked a $25 case or what. I may have saved $10 there. I just picked a mid tower that looked passable. Now there's a few weird caveats you could go into long discussions of. First, her Windows 10 OEM license, $32. I don't know where she's getting that. This looks to be kingwin.net. I do not know. This looks like some kind of gray market bullshit, I've never heard of a normal Windows 10 key for $35. And plus, this is Canadian, so I don't know about this. This is a gray market for sure. Generally, if you go on Newegg, let's search Newegg Windows 10 OEM. It's going to be $100, as we see here. Windows 10 Home 64-bit OEM, $99.99. That's the correct price. I don't know what she did. This is gray market, quasi legal. But you can generally get it for 89, not 99. So that was the general price that I used, was $90. I assumed for Windows. on my build. But yeah, she put $32. That's too cheap. You can't do that. Like I said, that's some kind of pirated thing, really. Or gray market. There's a lot of gray market going on with Windows 10 or with Windows, period. But if you want to go legit and be honest and straight up about things, it's $90 for the Windows 10 license. So she really cheated for between about $60 there. You ain't getting Windows 10 for $32. Well, that's Canadian anyway, but then she kind of made it back by putting in the Blu-ray drive, which I didn't, so our builds came out similar anyway. But I forgot about the hard drive. I didn't research hard drives, but I'm gonna assume $50 is about right. Maybe go a little cheaper, but yeah, everything else, her prices look good. Now here's another huge discussion we could get into: the graphics card. Here's the main problem: you cannot get any AMD graphics card right now. I didn't realize this until I started researching this build, and I put two and two together, but there's a cryptocurrency bubble. Bitcoin's in a bubble again, and AMD cards are great for Bitcoin mining, much better than NVIDIA. You can't get an AMD card pretty much less an RX 580. Like, let me click this. I guarantee this link will be out of stock. Out of stock. You can't get a AMD card. But also, another thing is these prices are inflated. An RX 580 is not supposed to be $266. It's supposed to be $229. So if it weren't for the inflated prices going on, that's the MSRP. I looked up reviews. And usually the real prices are a little under MSRP, so you could probably get one for $200, to be honest, $220, $210. So yeah, like, you could knock a lot off for that video card. Let's assume you could get one for $200. I'm not sure. Here's another thing you could do. You could get an RX 570, which is the next version down from the 580, and it comes up to 5.1 teraflops, which is the less than the Xbox One X, but its MSRP is $169 for the 4 gigabyte version. Now, it also comes in 8 gigabyte versions, possibly. So here's what I'm saying. One option, if AMD cards were normal price, because they're not right now, you could get an RX 570 8 gigabyte version, because remember, we were requiring 8 gigabytes on our video card to be equivalent to Xbox One X. So a 4 gigabyte video card will not cut it. But you could get if you could get RX 570 8 gigabyte version for something like $200, maybe $190. I'm assuming you could before the Bitcoin bubble. You could overclock it if it's 5.1 teraflops. If you could overclock it by up to 1 teraflop, so that'd be 1/5, so it'd be like 20%. If you could do a 20% overclock, which is granted pretty high, real high, but let's say you could only get a 10% overclock and you could only get it to 5.5 teraflops. I'd call that close enough, close enough. You're talking about less than 10% difference to the 6 teraflops. You're in the ballpark, let's put it that way. So I think one option would be if you could get an 8 gigabyte RX 570, which, to be honest, I don't know how common 8 gigabyte 570s were, or are, whichever, and I don't know the pricing of them, but I'm assuming since the 4 gigabyte was MSRP'd at $169, I'm assuming the 8 gigabyte 570 would probably be around $20 more, maybe $180, $190 street price. It's impossible to say, and again, the MSRP on an 8 gigabyte 580 was $229. You can usually get things a little less than MSRP. Not always, so it's so many caveats. Here's the point at the end of the day: you cannot get any AMD card right now; they're sold out. So this build is out the door. Now you can get the NVIDIA equivalent, which is the GeForce 1060 Ti or 1060. It's not even the Ti. That comes with 6 gigabyte RAM, which isn't as much as 8, but I guess you could suffice it. And they're running about $250 right now, about $249 on Newegg. That's the best you could do right now, and you're not saving much. So, yeah. And to me, it's not equivalent. It's equivalent in PC terms, because if you run benchmarks, the 1060 will do just as fast as the 580. But in real terms, it's not, because the 1060 is something like 3.8 teraflops or something. I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but it's in the threes. Now, I believe. Let me go ahead and Google that. 1060 teraflops. Oh, it's it looks like about 4 teraflops, it says here. It's gonna take me a while to get down to this. Where's the clocks? FP32 compute. Okay. NVIDIA 1060. Yeah, 1066 gigabytes. Let's go down here. 4.4. Okay, so the NVIDIA 1060 is only 4.4 teraflops. That's way below 6 now. In a PC setting, NVIDIA cards are always more efficient per teraflop, or per flop, meaning the 1060 in a PC will perform just as well as a 6 teraflop at 4.4 teraflops will perform just as well as a 6 teraflop RX 580, or roughly. The RX 580 may be a little faster. And actually, not really. Okay, but in a console, like, you're going to have problems because the way PCs work, the cards have to mold to the software. Like, there's just this software out there, and any individual card has to run it as best they can, you know. In a console world, it's reverse. The software conforms to the hardware, at least to a large extent. So when somebody makes a game for a console, they are programming it to take advantage of every nook and cranny of that console. Whereas a PC, it just, you know, if you were to get a PC card and you go buy Assassin's Creed, it's not designed to run on that particular PC card. It's designed to just run on any PC. So it's going to be like ugly code, so to speak. It's not efficient, and your PC card's job is to sort through that ugly code and run it as fast as it can, you know. And NVIDIA GPUs are good at that, but it's the same reason. The NVIDIA cards don't have as much raw power. They're just good at running shitty code. If basically, I'm trying to say that if you had a GeForce 1060 in a console, it would not be as powerful as an RX 580 in a console. Same reason the RX 580 is much better at Bitcoin mining. It has much more raw brute strength. So my point of all this long-winded talk is, and it's all just kind of a theoretical discussion, but is the 1060 equivalent to the RX 580? Not really. It is in a PC setting, but it wouldn't be in a console setting. But I guess since that's all theoretical and meaningless, let's just call it equivalent. So, point is, going back to our build here, you could sub out at $249. I checked the Newegg prices of GeForce 1060 6GB. You could sub it out at $249, save about $17, but that's still way too high though. So, at the end of the day, you can come up with something, it's still not as good. Like, my build would look like this. CPU would be $45 versus $90. Now the motherboard, I don't remember exactly, but it was around $50. Hers says 45. I think mine was around 50 for 8. Let's just call it, we'll take the low end and say $45. And just, you know, it may be a couple dollars more than, maybe 49, whatever. The particular RAM, we'll use her price again as well. 8GB DDR3. We'll say $47. It was, well, we'll just round it off to 50. I'm not going to use her prices for everything because that's roughly how much it was. It's roughly $50. If that means 47, if that means 51, whatever. Graphics card, that's a big problem, but if we were building this PC today, we couldn't use any AMD cards, so we're going to have to go with the 1060, and it's going to be $249. No two ways around it. GeForce 1060 6GB. Now, this is an artificial situation. You could make this build under normal circumstances cheaper because you could get some of them AMD cards much cheaper than this build. You know, you just could. So yeah. Normally, if we weren't in a cryptocurrency bubble, you could build this cheaper by probably around $50. I'm assuming you could get like a GeForce 5 or RX 580 for, you know, 220. The MSRP of it's 229, so that'd be worst case. We already saved $30 or $20, if not less. You know, probably around 200 if we were really pushing it. You know, so you could save up to $50. Hard drive, I'm going to just put in there $50. I didn't actually look up these prices, but I'm just going to take up her price. I'm going to assume she's correct. Optical drive, none. I don't have one. Power supply, PSU, that's correct, about $35. Case, I'm going to say, I think I did the case for $25 personally, so I'll put that value in. OS, that's one where she went wrong. I'm going to say 90 for OEM Windows 10. Disk. No, I don't care about shipping. Shipping is a thing, but I'm not going to worry about that. Or, you know, I could say $10 just for the heck of it. Oh, I also included a mouse keyboard. Now, I didn't include a monitor or speakers. I'm going to assume you have one because if I'm buying a console, it doesn't come with a monitor either, or speakers, or a TV, or whatever. Let's assume you have. But it does come with that controller. So you do need a mouse keyboard. Now, the cheapest mouse keyboard of decent quality I found on Newegg was a combo wired, but, you know, was $15. It was a Logitech, so it's a good brand. Like the next one was some really off brand for like $11.50. So I'm like, why save $3.50 for some shitty brand when you can get a basic Logitech for $3.50 more? You know, so I went for the $15 one. So there you go. And if you do all this, you still come up at higher than the Xbox One X. You come up to $604. Let me fix this. So, grand total $604, and you still don't have a Blu-ray drive. You still don't have a Blu-ray drive, which I don't consider worth much, but you know, it's a little. If you're trying to make a strict equivalency, it's a little something. So there you go. That's your PC equivalent of the Xbox One X, done better than this lady did. I got a legit Windows 10 license, and I didn't include a Blu-ray drive because you don't need one. Now, here's the thing. If under normal circumstances, GPU equal 200. If you could get an AMD GPU under normal pricing, I think you could get it closer to 200. Maybe that's a little aggressive, but you know, like I said, MSRP on the 8GB 580 is 229, and you can usually find cards, not always but often, for a little under MSRP. So 219, something like that, maybe 209 on some. You start getting into rebates, which I don't like to count rebates whenever I do builds because they're a pain in the ass. But or you know, the other option was the 570 8GB. I have no idea what they were street pricing for when you could get them, but and then upclock it and you know get into all that, but. $200 I think is a good number for a normal. Equal 200. A normal AMD GPU. But you're still at 554. You're still above the Xbox One, and it's still with no Blu-ray. And as I also said, you wouldn't actually want to build this because that CPU is too weak, and her CPU as well. If you really did this build, if you really were going to build the PC, you'd spend a couple hundred more and you'd get like a 4-core Intel, you know, whatever i5 7600K or whatever they're on right now. And that would increase your motherboard cost to around 100, and then your RAM cost would go up another 50. So you'd be up, you know, another $200 on your build, but it would be worth it because you'd have a much longer lasting, actually viable system, you know, going into the future. And you'd want 16 gigabytes of DDR4 and all this. So you wouldn't actually want to go build this system because it's too limited looking into the future on the CPU platform side, either hers or mine. But, you know, this is just a thought exercise. So in this case, it's okay. So yeah, conclusion of the video, you cannot build a Xbox One. To my surprise, you cannot build a PC that equals the Xbox One X for the same price. You know, you come up to $604 in actual reality today with no Blu-ray drive, which again isn't a big deal, but it's still something to consider. And even under normal circumstances where GPU prices weren't inflated because the crypto bubble, you'd still be running $554 and still no, which is 10% more, $50 more. And I didn't even count shipping, which, you know, it'd probably be $10 or something. And I don't know, I just don't. You could probably go build this at Micro Center for cheaper. I don't know. Forget Micro Center, because not everybody has one, and that's a whole nother can of worms. I doubt you're going to get a whole lot cheaper than this anyway. You're still not going to be able to get a cheap graphics card at Micro Center either. So there you have it. There's my Xbox One X build, and you cannot build an Xbox One X PC equivalent for the same price.